The spending battle continues in Congress as the latest stopgap spending measure or continuing resolution expires April 8th. We're joined now by New York Representative Nan Hayworth. She's a freshman who defeated Democrat incumbent John Hall back in November. Her district includes several counties north of New York City. She's a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Welcome to Newsmax, Representative.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm so glad to be here.
You're a doctor by profession, an ophthalmologist. You had a very successful career. You were a clinical instructor at the prestigious Mount Sinai Medical Center in New York City. What convinced you to run for Congress?
Conviction and passion. When the supermajority election took place in 2008, I did become convinced that the federal government would most likely exceed its constitutional size and scope, and that was exactly what unfolded over the ensuing several months. So in April of 2009, I decided that I would run for Congress.
54 Republicans, including 22 freshmen, voted against the CR continuing resolution because they felt the cuts weren't deep enough, and also they're opposed to funding the government on an incremental basis. You identify yourself as a staunch fiscal conservative. You voted for the CR.
I did. Actually, I felt it was the right thing to do. When we're cutting, the American public is winning. But it's very true that the cuts that we have made don't go nearly far enough, and I agree with my colleagues in that way. And I think there's actually a tremendous amount of unity within the House Republican Conference on that. But we do have tactics to think about. We do have but 1/3 of the levers legislatively, so we have to deal with the Senate and with the President.
Many conservatives were against the CR because it did not defund Obamacare.
Yes.
You're an opponent of Obamacare. What's your take on all of this?
The funding issue is indeed one that's pressing. It's not one that we can deal with completely through a continuing resolution, and that has to do with the technicalities of funding the federal government's operations. So it will be dealt with in the budget, and I'm sure as well as needed, depending on how we apportion these decisions, in a decision on the debt ceiling, which is due to come in May, probably.
Ask you to put on your doctor's hat here for a moment, if we could. Been 1 year since Obama signed the Democrats' healthcare reform law. Not one Republican in either chamber voted for it. We know that it cut Medicare by $500 billion. What are the detrimental effects?
We all know now the estimates by both the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services and subsequently by the Congressional Budget Office have shown that this plan will cost the American public probably in excess, the best estimates tell us in excess of $1 trillion more than they would spend if it were not in effect. So it's a huge cost in bureaucracy, in the price of insurance, in covering comprehensively members of the public who might not require that form of insurance and would be better served by alternatives.
Okay, let's talk specifically about the doctor-patient relationship. Some critics say the power is shifted under Obamacare away from patients and doctors and states to the federal government. Yes. How dangerous is this in terms of doctor-patient relationships?
Well, it's a model of care that the American public has never experienced as its ideal, and indeed as most Americans have experienced in their own lives. We expect to have quality and choice and innovation. We are a different medical consumer, if you will, than any other nation in the world. So to have the federal government effectively become the payer for our care, which is, if you walk out the consequences of the Affordable Care Act over the next several years, that's what will happen. The federal government will indeed be making the decisions about what care is given, what kind of medications we receive, what procedures can be done, and on what categories of patients. It's going to be a very profound change from the ideal that we aspire to and that most of us have experienced.
Your colleague from Wisconsin, Paul Ryan, the Budget Committee chairman, admits Republicans will be giving Democrats a weapon when they come out with a budget next month that aims to trim entitlement spending. Are you in favor of entitlement cutbacks, and is that a political liability?
I am in favor of making our entitlement programs work for the future. We have current beneficiaries who are relying on those programs. We have to honor our commitment to them to the fullest possible extent, and we have to know that those programs form about 2/3 between Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, which is a little bit different, of course. They form about 2/3 of the federal budget and growing. So we can't solve our budget problems, our deficit spending year upon year, our growing debt, unless we are courageous and smart and sensible and plan for the future for our entitlements.
All right, you've been in office approximately 3 months now. First impressions of the House?
Well, we have a very impressive House Republican conference in leadership. And even though, as we've mentioned, there has been some difference in the pattern of voting on this most recent measure, we are united in our goal of relieving American citizens of the burdens of a too big and too invasive federal government that is costing us opportunity and jobs.
How many terms ideally would you like to serve?
Well, as I have said many times on the trail, I am very willing to term limit myself, and I've told the folks who have been whom I'm privileged to serve as my constituents, that I think 5 terms is probably about the limit for any of us. And right now, as you can imagine, Ashley, my goal is to be worthy of having their vote for a 2nd term.
New York Representative Nan Hayworth, thanks so much and good luck to you there in Washington.
Thank you
We
very
appreciate
much.
it.
I appreciate it.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.